So here's the news out of California. We've been hearing about it for weeks, but Gavin Newsom is going to try to redraw the congressional maps to counter the Texas redistricting. The proposed maps were not up at the time I made the video, but we'll see what's going on here and then we'll talk about what might be a little bit more of a fair or unfair map for this state. So as we get down into this article from Politico, it looks like California is going through to get some revenge on Texas for what looks like them going through with a pretty unfair map of their own. Now, there's no guarantee a new map is going to go into effect here in California. There's already an independent commission, so to try to get around that and get through all the lawsuits, it's not the easiest thing in the world. But assuming it goes through, we've got the changes here of which GOP seats are going to be vulnerable. Essentially, it would pick up 5 seats for the Dems. That would offset the Texas gains for the GOP. We've got the table here of every district. We can make it a little bit bigger even though it's not the highest resolution. So we've got the before and the after broken up into 2 columns. In this, Dems would shore up support for their vulnerable members, and the Republican seats would go from 9 down to just 4. The 4 that would stay would be the 5th district, the 20th, the 23rd, and the 40th. The Republicans in those districts would be Tom McClintock, Jay Obernolte, Young Kim, and Vince Fong. The others look like they'd be getting the axe. Here we'll have to see if Republicans do some form of a walkout like the Texas Dems did. If that happens, then we're likely to see politics at its finest, where everybody flip-flops on their positions. So with the new map not up just yet, let's decide how fair or unfair the map is. Geography is not friendly to the Republicans in this state, but even with that said, even with an independent commission, the old map, which is the current one, already seemed highly imbalanced on a macro level. But just how bad is it? Well, we could take a look at it. So to get some perspective, let's take a look at some of the recent election results in California. First, because we're talking about the U.S. House, let's take a look at those results from 24. Now, the state has 52 congressional districts. Of those, Democrats won 43, Republicans won just 9 of them. And Dems actually picked up 3 seats in that election. Now, the popular vote for the U.S. House was Dems at 60.5 and Republicans 39.2. Now, since this is for the House, this is comparing apples to apples. However, these House results can be skewed. The major thing is that California uses a top 2 primary. That means the top 2 candidates, regardless of party, go on to the general election. So in some of these districts, they're not competitive. They might have 2 Democrats or 2 Republicans in the general. So obviously, if there's 2 of one party, that's going to make these overall statewide results skewed just a little bit. The more times it happens, the bigger the impact. Also, candidate quality and everything else matters. However, when it comes to overall fairness in the state, I've analyzed every single map on this channel, and I always try to start with the statewide partisan lane. Now, we'll take a look at the presidential results in just a moment. But if you started here with Dems at 60.5, Republicans 39.2, of those 52 House seats, if it perfectly correlated down for each party, then Dems would have between 31 and 32 seats, Republicans between 20 and 21. Now, it is a blue state. I would expect Dems to have at least a little bit of an advantage. So rounded that up to 32 seats, even throwing in a couple of more, given the partisan lane, that would be 34 seats to the Republicans' 18. But what do we see here? We see that the Democrats control 82.7 of the seats, Republicans just 17.3. On its face, that is an extreme imbalance. And given the number of seats in this state, it is the number 1 or 2 worst map I've taken a look at, and I've looked at all of them multiple times. Now, this state does have an independent commission, so it's safe to say that the commission did a better job than if it were purely just the Dems. But just because it's an independent commission does not mean that it's a great map or a fair map. When you're this imbalanced, over 80% for one party, and you had an independent commission, there is definitely room to complain about what's going on here in terms of competition. Now, some people like a lot of competitive districts, some people don't. They want a bunch of them to be safe. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it. But no matter how you slice it, there's no way this map is remotely close to fair. Now, if you want arguably a better metric, we could take a look at the presidential results. Here it's even a little bit more narrow. Harris was at 58.5, Trump 38.3, so just over 20%, and a clear decline from Biden's 29 back in 2020. Now again, these maps in any state, they don't have to be perfect. Some states don't have great geography for one party or the other. In California, it's not fantastic geography for the Republicans, and the state is more blue than Texas is red. But we're talking about 52 seats. If everything were perfect, technically, again, Republicans should have more than 20 seats here. But even if you gave the Dems a big advantage, it would seem like Republicans should have at least 15 of them. I would think if this were the other way around and Republicans controlled 82% of the seats out of 52 of them, this would be a major story. Dems would have a huge problem with it, as they should. And just because it's an independent commission does not mean that the debate should end. It might be hard to draw some of these districts for the Republicans, but if you're looking to have one rule across all 50 states, having it at least close to that statewide partisan lean, either for president or for the U.S. House, I think is the only fair way to go. If you're off by a seat or two, maybe even 3 or 4 in a bigger state, it's not the end of the world. But when you're off by 10 or more seats, that's something else. Now, for a little bit more reference, let's take a look at that U.S. Senate election. Here, the margin is even a little bit more narrow. Adam Schiff at 58.8, Steve Garvey 41.3. Now, those are both for the special election. The regular election just above, not too different. So just like I said in the Texas map, that map is definitely not fair. It would likely be the most unfair map in a red state. But in terms of that top line number, the current California map is still more imbalanced than that proposed Texas map. But if you were going to redraw the map in favor of the Dems, let's take a look at the table of all 52 seats. We're going to sort by the Cook PVI rating. So most of these are already held by the Dems. If we scroll down to the bottom here, we can start to see the Republican seats. Now, the Cook PVI rating is not updated for 24. We know that this state did have a decent shift toward the right. Trump won some districts, but they also elected a Dem in the U.S. House. We can see some of these blue-leaning districts that Dems had pickups in. Adam Gray took down John Duarte, George Whitesides took down Mike Garcia, and Derek Tran defeated Michelle Steele. Now, in a new map, it would seem easiest to go after the more competitive Republican seats. And as lopsided as the map already is, just a few tweaks here and there should be able to pick off some of these Republicans. Now, in theory, there's enough blue vote here. Dems could get crazy and eliminate all the Republicans if they really wanted to. So depending on how it goes, it could turn into a partial dummy mander, and some of these districts could become more competitive. So it probably doesn't even matter which Republicans are targeted. If you're looking to take an advantage, you're going to take it any way you can get it. Now, if you're curious about how this process might go in California, here's a page on Ballotpedia that outlines the whole thing. So again, there's going to be all kinds of legal challenges. There's no guarantee it's going to happen, just like in Texas. But the state is going to have to figure out a way to get around that independent commission. So if we scroll down here, this goes over more of the process. We've got a 2/3 vote is required during one legislative session for the California state legislature to place a constitutional amendment on the ballot. So could this whole thing pass and amount to a trigger if Texas goes through with their redistricting? Yeah, I guess anything is possible. But it does seem bizarre once you have the independent commission and once you've already used it, that you're going to temporarily get around it. And if this all panned out and they're supposedly only going to use the new maps until the next census, then to me that says if Texas had drawn these proposed maps after the 2020 census, then it's totally fine. Or if they do it after the 2030 census, then California doesn't care? Only the mid-decade redistricting is the big problem. I do think that's unusual, although they have done it in other states. They did it in New York, North Carolina. They could do it in some other states like Wisconsin. They're going to do it in Ohio. So I generally don't want to see anybody redraw the maps unless they're correcting an imbalance. Texas was already an unfair map. They're about to ramp it way up. But California, along with Illinois, was already a terrible map. If they ramp it up even further, it would probably be the most imbalanced unfair map in history. So as I said in the Texas video, it is extremely dirty politics. I do want to see one solution for all 50 states. I think the only way to go is to focus on that statewide partisan lane. Dems usually like to talk about race in the Voting Rights Act. I think a lot of times they use that argument as an excuse to just get more seats for their party. The name of the game is which party is going to be advantaged here, not which racial group. That would come later, if at all. So the goal I have for all states is to get close, at least semi-close to that statewide partisan lane. California was already extremely far from it, even with that independent commission. Any more seats for the Dems would ramp that way, way up. So here is the current map on Dave's redistricting. The districts are shaded to help you see the outlines. Now there's way too much here, we can't go through all of this. But we can also toggle this, and this will show you where the red and the blue vote is. But one thing to keep in mind here is this vote is not from 2024. This is 2016 to 2020, so it could use an update. And if it did, the map would look a little bit redder. So obviously, massive ton of blue vote in this state, up and down the coast. So if we zoom into the LA area, let's take a look at some of the boundaries on these districts. And just like in Texas and plenty of other states, most of these not pretty at all. Take a look at this 41st district. It's a terrible looking shape, and it has this thing here in the middle that goes up. How about over here in the 28th? This one clearly goes around the 31st. The 45th here, it's another one that snakes around the 46th. If we take a look at the partisan vote, you can see most of these districts are either packing in the vote for race or political party purposes. So this state is not going to win any awards for having the prettiest districts. Look at this one here, the 20th. This covers a ton of space. It's like the world's worst looking puzzle piece. It's got this whole thing going on right here. It's got this foot over here to the lower right. Then it's got a claw out here in front of it. And then the head to this monster is right up here. This looks like a truly gerrymandered district. If we toggle this, again, this pretty much packs in a lot of Republican vote here. It avoids a lot of the blue vote, and that gives the GOP a district here. So I say it every time, but nothing is going to be perfect. It depends how you define fair, and everybody's going to do it different. But I think you got to have one standard that you could apply to all 50 states, and it's not going to give one party or the other a clear advantage. So there is a whole lot going on here in California. Ton of districts, ton going on politically. Same in Texas, although California is starting to lose some districts, Texas is still gaining them. After that next census, who knows what's going to happen. So in conclusion, the current map, technically it is even more imbalanced than the proposed Texas map. This new proposal in California goes way, way off the extreme end. I don't think anybody would say either of the maps are fair. You could always talk about who started it or who's benefiting more overall. Everybody has their own rationalization as to why it's okay for one side to do it and not the other. But if you're trying to be objective and talk about what a fair map would be, or something that's close to resembling balanced, you're not going to find it in Texas, and you're definitely not going to get anywhere near it here in California. There's degrees to how severe everything is, so I'm going to leave that up to you to decide which map is worse. For now, that's another look at what's going on in California. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about this proposed California map? Do you think it's great because of Texas? Do you think the current map is already totally imbalanced? What should we do to solve this? Should we focus more on race when drawing the maps, or should we focus less on it and go for the partisan lean? Which map is the worst for you? Let me know down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.